Hi, how's it going everyone? I hope all of you are doing well. So this is a detailed dog guide where I'll be going through how to play dogs, what are the specific strengths and weaknesses of dogs, and also what are the best food you can get for dog, and most importantly, what are the best pets you can combo dogs with. Dogs are a very strong scaling unit that is often a key part of a 10-win strategy, and the unique attribute of dogs is that whenever you summon a pet, it gets either a +1 attack or a +1 health buff at level 1. At level 2 is either a +2 attack or +2 health buff, and at level 3 is a +3 attack or +3 health buff. And this buff is at random, so it can be 3 attacks or it can be 3 health buff, so it's purely random. And when these pets are summoned during battle, these buffs are non-permanent, so it ends after the battle and it just disappears. But when it is summoned outside of battle means whatever pets that you buy during your shopping phase, all of these buffs are permanent. So one of the most important strengths of a dog is its unique attribute. Whenever you summon a pet, the dog gets a buff, and this makes it a very reliable scaler as compared to other scalers like your worm or your bison. Worm is not so reliable in the sense because you need to buy food that is targeted at your own worm. You need to buff it, and if you don't buff it, then your worm can't get the buff, right? So often you're looking for pears and apples. And when you're buying things like sushi, it's not always guaranteed. And if you're buying things like garlic armor or melon, you only buy once, right? You can't keep buying it and it will be a waste, and you don't want to like replace the current status effect you have. So it's not necessarily very stable and reliable. You only have 2 slots. So you need to roll a lot of times. And if you're unlucky, you might not be able to get the +1/+1 or +2/+2 buff. You will keep on getting things like garlic armor, honey. That's absolutely useless. And you also have bisons, which are very powerful, but it takes a very long time for them to gain enough buff to be sizable to defeat your opponent's pet. At level 1 is pretty weak. It only gains a +2/+2 buff. So often you want to look for like a level 2 bison or level 3 bison. Otherwise the buff it gains is not very substantial enough, and you need a longer time for you to get your bison to grow to a stage where it can be very powerful. Otherwise, you are limited by time and you are limited by the opportunity where the shop gives you the necessary bison to level your bison up. Otherwise, your dog is still the most reliable scaling unit because the shop will always offer you pets, and it doesn't matter what kind of pet it is. You can just keep on buying and selling as long as your roster has an open spot. So the next key strength of a dog is that it gets buff in battle too, besides getting buff outside of battle. In battle, even though the buff is not permanent, it is still very useful during the early to mid game because you can be building a swarm build where you have a lot of sheep, a lot of crickets, and then with a dog you can gain buffs from your sheep dying, and then summoning rams and summoning zombie crickets where you can buff your dogs and your dogs become more powerful and your dogs can slay your other opponent's pets. So one of the weaknesses of dogs is that it requires an open spot in your roster in order to scale your dog, because you need to buy and sell, right? So oftentimes you need to leave an open spot so that you can buy and sell. Otherwise, you can't really scale your dogs at all. Hence, this kind of limits your advantage, and often this additional slot that you're wasting away can be a tactical slot that you can include a very useful pet like a skunk to win you the game, and this can be a huge risk you are undertaking in order to scale your dog up. The second weakness of a dog is that there's no special effect that can give you an edge over an opponent that has equal power. So in the late game, when you are reaching about turn 15 onwards, a lot of the pets are coming together and they have very special synergistic effects that can just tear through your build very easily. And having a 50/50 statted dog is not going to win you a game because they also have a 50 stats animal, and their animal has some special effects as well. They can use skunks to reduce your health, and a 50/50 dog just becomes absolutely useless. It has 1 health now with a level 3 skunk on your opponent's team. So this is one of the weaknesses of dogs, where it scales very quickly, but once it reaches a certain point late in the game, in a very very late game, it starts to lose its advantage. So here are the synergistic pets you can combo your dogs with. The first type of pet is swarm pets. So swarm pets like sheep, spider, cricket. So whenever they die, they spawn more pets, and whenever they spawn more pets, your dogs get more buff, and your dogs get more buff, they become stronger, they can defeat your opponent's pet very easily. You can combine these swarm pets with honeybee to spawn even more stuff, and then you can combine these swarm pets with horses, turkeys to create more value whenever you spawn these small creatures is too weak. So you can use horses and turkeys to grant more buff to these spawn units, and at the same time you can also run your sharks as well. Sharks gain a lot of buff whenever your swarm unit dies, so it can be very synergistic when you include dogs and sharks together. So when you summon units, your dogs gets a buff. When your summoned units die, then your shark also gets a buff as well. So this swarm build actually combos pretty well with your dog. So another type of synergistic pet that you can combo dogs with is dragons and shrimp. So dragons and shrimp is very similar to dogs in a way where they incentivize you to buy and sell pets. So when you're running dogs, you always have an open spot on the roster where you want to buy and sell pets, and having a dragon is very useful there because whenever you buy and sell a tier 1 pet, you are able to grant +1/+1 buff to all your roster creatures. So it really depends on which level your dragon is at. Dragon at level 1 is +1/+1, and at level 2 is +2/+2 to all of your pets, and +3/+3 is at level 3 dragon. And then once you give all this massive AoE buff, then your dog also gives itself a buff because you are buying and selling a pet at the same time, so double the value. Personally, I feel the dragon is a better option as compared to a shrimp. I don't think shrimp is powerful enough yet because shrimp only gives you a +1 health buff, and at level 2 it gives you a +2 health buff, and at level 3 it gives you a +3 health buff, which is, I'm not quite sure whether is it powerful enough during the early game and mid game to provide any kind of power. Like, you might be able to take more damage, but overall you also want your pet to hit harder so that it can destroy your opponent's pet, and shrimp hasn't really worked very well in my favor whenever I run shrimp with dogs. And the last pet that is synergistic with dog is not exactly synergistic in a way that is like similar to a swarm pet or a dragon shrimp pet that incentivizes you to buy and sell. This is just a very general tool that is very useful for all kinds of pets, which is a skunk. A skunk reduces the strongest pet on your opponent's roster by 33%, 66%, and 99% depending on the level. So level 1, level 2, and level 3. This works very well with dog because once your dog scales to a certain point that is very powerful, you want to be able to use your skunk to reduce your opponent's strongest unit so that your dog can just easily destroy them, or even narrow the gap if your opponent's creature is like very powerful. And then having a skunk is very, very pivotal to winning the game because you can just reduce their health easily and your dog can either trade with them or wipe them out. So in general, skunks are very much a utility tool that can be very effective in a build where you are running a lot of very strong creatures. And of course, any kind of 10-win strategy will require you to run a lot of very strong creatures, right? So skunk is definitely one of the S tier pets you can run. And the next section in this guide is the best food for dogs. So there are 2 food you can buy for a dog. It's either a garlic armor or a melon. So both are pretty useful. For garlic armor, it's pretty useful from the early to mid game because it can reduce 2 damage, which is a lot in the early to mid game because 2 damage means a lot when all the pets that you're fighting against are like hitting for 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and -2 is pretty insane there, where it can ensure that your dog survives for multiple attacks and you can just use your dog in the front to destroy every pet in your opponent's roster. And melon armor is very useful, I think, in the late game because melon armor can take like 20 damage at most, and then you can use that to soak up a lot of damage that your opponent, if your opponent is hitting like 50 damage, you can soak up like at least 20 damage and you can survive the attack and destroy your opponent's pet. So that's the end of the detailed dog guide, and dogs itself are a very strong scaling unit that is often essential to a 10-win strategy. By no means it is a must buy, and a dog is not necessarily going to win you 10 wins every single time. As compared to other scaling units also have their own strength as well. One of the key weaknesses of dogs is that it requires an open spot for you to buy and sell pets, and that is something that I don't really like because you are losing advantage there where you can just plug in the scorpion or skunk to win you games, and losing a empty spot to keep it open just to buff a dog might not be useful in the late game, and that's the key issue that I have with dogs. But overall, if you want to get into a dog strategy, you want to get in as early as possible. So I'm not quite sure how early you can get a dog. Probably by turn 4 and turn 5 you want to get a dog as early as possible because you want to be able to give you enough time to buy and sell units, right? And then you want to have enough time to roll dogs and get a dog to level 2, because at level 1 dog is absolutely trash, it's not viable at all. Sometimes it is possible for you to get a dog very early on, and then your rolls are very shitty, you don't get to roll dogs at all afterwards, and your dog just stuck at level 1, and you know, you have to make a hard decision to just pivot out of a dog, because your dog is just scaling by +1 +0 every single time, which is not very useful, not very powerful in the late game, and the dog itself is not sufficient. You also need other ways to scale your dog up, like a dragon, or you can use penguins, monkeys to scale them even faster, because your opponent is also scaling their units as well. So that's that for a detailed guide. Hopefully the information I shared with you help you become a better dog player, and if you're interested in my dog gameplays or even all of my Super Auto Pets gameplay, the 10-win gameplays or the unique builds that I've created, you can check out the channel. I've created a lot of gameplay videos on Super Auto Pets.